In the summer of 1383, an old widow stood in a cold stone church in Lincoln while the king's men leaned in and asked her to count. How many days in a week? How many shillings in 40 pennies? This is the story of what actually happened to you if you lost your reason in medieval London. And the strangest part is what people truly feared. It was never the chain or the cell. It was the question. Using AI trained on medieval court rolls, chronicles, and the faded inventories of England's first asylum, we rebuild this vanished world and the people the records almost forgot. A morning in the city, sometime in the late 1300s, smoke from 1,000 cooking fires hangs low over the rooftops, and somewhere along a narrow lane, a man is speaking urgently to someone no one else can see. His neighbours know him. They have watched this come on slowly, like weather. Here, almost everything we expect is missing. No ambulance, no ward, no diagnosis. There is only the street and the people on it, deciding what to do with him. To them, a mine that slipped its moorings was not a medical event. It was a riddle with 3 possible answers. Some believed it was the body, too much of a dark, cold humour the physicians called melancholy. Some believed it was the heavens and blamed the moon, thought to pull at the tides of the mind. That belief is still sitting in your mouth every time you use the word lunatic. It comes straight from luna, the Latin moon. And some believed it was something darker still, an intruder, a spirit that had crept in. We know this last one was no abstraction because of a woman named Emma de Beston. When officials examined why Emma had begun giving her property away, the record states plainly that she had been deprived of her senses 4 years earlier by the snares of evil spirits. And they even fixed the date it began. The 1st of May, 1378. I find that detail haunting. Not that they believed it, but that they wrote it down like a fact in a ledger. Here is where the story turns cold and strange. Generations earlier, the English crown had claimed a remarkable right. If you lost your reason, the king became interested in you. But not, I'm sorry to say, out of tenderness. He was interested in your land. An old statute, the Prerogativa Regis, the royal prerogative, split the afflicted into 2 groups, in language that lands hard on a modern ear. There were idiots, those held to have been without reason since birth. And there were lunatics, those who had once been sound and lost it perhaps to find it again. The difference was money. For a so-called idiot, the king could take the profits of their lands for the rest of their life, handing the estate back to the heirs only at the very end. For a lunatic, who might recover, he held the property in trust and was meant to return it, surplus and all, if their reason came home. One historian put it bluntly. This was not a welfare service. It was predatory kingship, dressed as protection, profiting from the moment a person could no longer guard their own gate. To me, that is the quiet horror at the heart of it. Not cruelty exactly, but a system that looked at someone's worst hour and saw an opportunity. If that lands the same way for you, tap the like and say so. If you think a rough age simply did what it had to, take the other side in the comments. The machinery was only getting started. There was, though, one place whose name would outlive every person in this story. In 1247, a former sheriff of London named Simon FitzMary gave away a patch of land outside the wall at Bishopsgate, where Liverpool Street Station now hums. He meant it as a priory, a little house to raise arms for the Holy Land. He did not know he was founding the most infamous address in the history of the human mind. They called it the Priory of St. Mary of Bethlehem. Londoners, with their genius for shortening things, slurred Bethlehem down to Bedlam and then to Bedlam. For a long time it was barely a hospital at all, and barely about madness. Only by the late 1300s do the records show it caring for those who had lost their reason, and the scale of it is the thing that stops me. Around the year 1400, an inventory of the place listed, among its tools, 6 iron chains with their locks, 4 pairs of manacles, and 2 sets of stocks. That was the equipment, and the number of people held there to use it on was 6. 6. The entire provision for madness in England's greatest city was one low building with 6 souls inside. Sit with the gap between that and the word it gave us. If you had to explain to a medieval Londoner that the name of their tiny crusade chapel would one day mean a screaming, overflowing chaos, how would you even begin? I genuinely want to read your attempt below. Even that small place could not be trusted. In 1403, an inquiry found that the man who ran it, a keeper remembered as Peter the Porter, had been quietly helping himself to the hospital's property. The mad, it turned out, were easy to rob, but robbing a handful of locked-away men was almost beside the point. The real machinery sat somewhere quieter, in a hearing room. To decide which of the two you were, idiot or lunatic, they held a hearing. And the questions they asked Emma have survived, word for word.
I cannot remember.
Which almost never happens. They asked her where she was.
Tell me now, do you know where you are?
I do not know this place.
She said Ely, which was wrong. They asked what day it was. She did not know. They asked how many days were in a week, and she said 7, correct, but then could not name a single one. They asked how many times she had married, and she said 3 and could give only one name. They asked how many shillings made 40 pennies, and the arithmetic was gone. I keep wondering what that room felt like to her. The men concluded she had neither the sense nor the memory to manage herself or her goods. The whole of a life weighed in a handful of questions on a Friday. And yet, and this matters, for the vast majority of people, none of this ever happened. The hearing only came for those with property worth seizing. For everyone else, the poor man muttering in the lane, no bed waited and no clerk wrote his name. There was his family, there was his parish. People were kept at home, fed, watched, walked to a saint's shrine in the hope the holy might call them back. Pilgrimage was medicine. Prayer was medicine. We picture the Middle Ages chaining the mad away in the dark. The truth is gentler, most simply stayed among the living, held by the only safety net there was. Because the real danger of losing your reason in this world was never the chain. It was that you became a thing to be administered, and your property became a prize. The moment Emma was declared unsound, the circling began. Powerful men, including her own town's mayor, maneuvered to get her lands. She was no longer quite a person in the eyes of the law. She was an estate with a heartbeat, and everyone wanted the keys. That, far more than any sell, was what it meant to lose your reason and own something worth taking. Most of them vanish from the record without a trace, walked home and cared for, and quietly grieved by people whose names we will never read. But the little house at Bishopsgate did not vanish. It grew and moved, and in crueler centuries became the spectacle that earned its terrible reputation. And astonishingly, it is still here. Bedlam Royal Hospital is treating patients in London to this day, the oldest institution of its kind in the world, nearly 800 years unbroken. Every time you call a noisy room Bedlam, you are speaking its name. Every time you say lunatic, you are pointing at the moon. The Middle Ages are not as far behind you as they look. We are the team behind History Recreated, and we go digging in these old inquisitions to give the forgotten their faces back. If Emma stayed with you, subscribe and walk the next century with us, and tell us which silenced life, which name buried in some clerk's careful hand, you'd want us to bring back into the light. Because in the end, they measured her mind in pennies and days and lost the one thing worth keeping, the woman who was standing right there.